Hello and welcome to MI classes. In this lecture, we are going to learn the different terminologies which are used in standard costing. Sometimes we know the answer, but we get quite confused because of different words which are used in the question. For example, all of us know what is standard quantity, but if the question says calculate standard quantity for actual output, confusion starts. Similarly, we know standard cost. But if the question says standard cost of standard quantity for actual output, again confusion starts. So in this lecture, we are going to learn those terminologies. Let's get started with the question. ABC India Limited provides you the following information. Standard quantity, standard price, actual quantity, actual price details are given. Further, it gives information about material A and material B, and is required to calculate standard quantity for actual output. Second one, standard cost of standard quantity for actual output. Likewise, point number C, D and E is required. Let's start computing. So, heading, statement showing computation of various costs. We need to insert 5 columns, so we will insert 5 columns here. The first one, forget what is asked in the question. What we know in material variances, we are going to calculate that. So we know first column is standard quantity into standard price. Second column is actual quantity into actual price. Third column is actual quantity into standard price, and last one is revised actual quantity into standard price. This is my working note number 1, working note number 2, working note number 3 and working note number 4. Now here we write A, B and total. This is what we have been writing, and these are working notes. Alright. Now, and heading would be raw material. So, are we doing anything different? No, we are not doing anything different. We are doing exactly the same thing what we were doing so far. Now, the first one says standard quantity for actual output. Basically, it is asking us to calculate standard quantity. This standard quantity full name is standard quantity for actual output. The second question is standard cost of standard quantity for actual output. Basically, it is asking us to calculate standard quantity into standard price, which we also call it as standard cost, or full name of is standard cost of standard quantity for actual output. Sounds complicated? Yes, it is little complicated. Simple word is standard quantity into standard price, which we also call it as standard cost. Similarly, actual quantity into actual price, we call it as actual cost or actual cost for actual output. But this is not asked in the question. The third one is called standard cost of actual quantity at standard price or standard cost of actual quantity for actual output. These are little lengthy names, little complicated. Most of the time we forget to learn this. And last one is called standard cost of revised quantity. This multiplied by this is called standard cost of revised quantity. Then what is revised quantity? This revised actual quantity is called revised quantity. Alright. So we have learned the different terminologies which are used in standard costing. Now we are going to calculate all these details. Fine. So let's fill whatever details are given. First one, actual quantity. So let's go to actual quantity. So 220 and 330. 220 kgs and 330 kgs. Copy it in the next column also where we need actual quantity. So 220 kgs and 330 kgs multiplied by actual price. So here we need actual price, actual cost details are given here, actual price details are given. So into rupees 25 into rupees 5. Here standard price. If you remember points to remember, I hope you remember all the points to remember. I will write it again and I will keep writing every time till you remember it perfectly. Points to remember. Point number 1. Budgeted quantity is not equals to standard quantity. Point number 2. Budgeted price per unit is equals to standard price per unit. Point number 3. Budgeted quantity ratio is equals to standard quantity ratio. Point number 4. Total actual quantity is equals to total revised actual quantity. And point number 5. Revised actual quantity is equals to total actual quantity distributed in which ratio? Distributed in budgeted quantity ratio, this is my first preference, or standard quantity ratio, this is my second preference. Alright, one more point, point number 6 or point number F. How do we calculate standard quantity? Standard quantity of here in this question A plus B is equals to AO divided by BAO into BACO of A plus B. Alright, so these are the 6 points which you always have to remember in all the variances which we are going to calculate here. So first, let's calculate revised actual quantity. So we know total actual quantity 220 plus 330. In which ratio? In budgeted quantity ratio. Budgeted quantity is always, is it budget or is it standard? So I told you in every question, wherever you see the word standard, write it as budgeted. Your 80% of the confusion will just disappear with just this small change. Alright, so we have changed it to budget. So it is budgeted quantity now. So budgeted quantity is 3:2 ratio or 30:20 ratio. So total actual quantity 220 plus 330. So total actual quantity is 550. We are distributing in which ratio? We are distributing in budgeted quantity ratio. And what is the ratio? 3:2 ratio. So 550 divided by 5 into 3 equals 330 kgs and 2 equals, we get 220 kgs. We get these kgs. Yes. So revised actual quantity for the first one is 330 kgs and for the second one it is 220 kgs. Remember, this is 220, this is 330. It is interchanged here. Alright, it is interchange. Will it always interchange? Not at all. It is just a coincidence that it is interchanging here. Multiplied by standard price per unit. We have learned budgeted price per unit is always equals to standard price per unit. So how much is standard price? Rupees 20 and this is rupees 10. How much is here? Rupees 20, here rupees 10. Alright, here also we can write rupees 20 and rupees 10. Standard quantity, we need to calculate last thing, standard quantity. So actual output is always given in the actual column, which is 225 kgs. This is my actual output divided by budgeted output. Budgeted output, this is budgeted column and this is output. So budgeted output is how much? 45 kgs. And to make 45 kgs, I told you we have to always read it together. So to make 45 kgs, we need 50 kgs of raw material, 30 kg plus 20 kg. We need 50 kgs of raw material. So let's calculate this. 225 divided by 45 multiplied by 50, we get 250 kgs of what? Of A and B. Now we have to divide it in which ratio? In this ratio, 30:20 ratio or budgeted quantity ratio. So 250 divided by 5 into 3. For A, we get 150 kgs and for B, we get 100 kgs. So we got standard quantity for A and standard quantity for B, 150 kgs and 100 kgs. Alright, now let's multiply and get these values. 150 multiplied by 20, 100 multiplied by 10 GT. So we get here 4000. Next one, 220 multiplied by 25, 330 multiplied by 5 GT. So we get 7150. Next one, 220 multiplied by 20, 330 multiplied by 10. We get 7700. Last one, 330 multiplied by 20, 220 multiplied by 10. We get 8800. Alright. So we have got all the variances here. We have got all the calculations here. We have done all the calculation. Let's go on to the first one, standard quantity for actual output. So standard quantity for actual output, we have got 150 and 100. So this is the answer for the first question. So let's write standard quantity for actual output. Answer number A. Quantity for actual output. So for A we have got 150 and for B we have got 100 kgs. Alright. Next one, standard cost of standard quantity for actual output. In other words, it is asking standard cost or standard quantity into standard price per unit for A and B. So for A it is 150 into 200 and for B it is 100 into 10. So 150 into 20 we get 3000. So this is 3000 and this is 1000. In case you want to put total also, you can put total here. Next one, point number C. It said standard cost of actual quantity for actual output. Remember, standard cost for actual quantity, standard cost of actual quantity for actual output. Basically it is asking actual quantity multiplied by standard price per unit. This is what the question is asking. So actual quantity 220 multiplied by 20, we get 4400. So first one is rupees 4400 and second one is 3300. Next one, revised quantity. So revised quantity we have already calculated above. For A, our revised quantity was 330 and for B it was 220. So 330 kgs and 220 kgs. Last one, point number E, standard cost of revised quantity. Standard cost of revised quantity. So how much is the standard cost of revised quantity? So it is asking basically revised actual quantity multiplied by standard price. So 330 multiplied by 20. So first one, 330 multiplied by 20, we get 6600. These are in rupees. Wherever it says cost, these are all in rupees. Alright, these are all in rupees wherever it says cost. Next one is for the product B or raw material B, it is 220 multiplied by 10. So it is rupees 2200. Alright, so we have calculated all that was asked in the question. Looks complicated, but it is very simple. Whatever we have learned, it is exactly asking that, but in a different style. I hope you have understood this. Please ensure that you remember all the different possible names for this. Lastly, revised quantity, I just want to tell you two other names. It is also called revised actual quantity, or some books also refer to it as a revised standard quantity. So remember all the possible names. Thank you so much. See you on the next lecture. If you have liked this lecture, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are new to our channel, please do subscribe to this channel to remain updated with the latest content. Thank you so much.